Hello and welcome. This is Michael Beach, and you are dialed into the What Are You Doing podcast. This is the show for thought leaders who are investing in the next generation of leadership for their organization. This is also the show for emerging leaders who want to become that next generation of great leaders. Together, we're all developing leaders who will lead the next generation to greatness. We are excited to be able to bring you another What Are You Doing podcast episode today. I'm especially excited today to have the opportunity to introduce you to a new friend of mine, Dr. Daralee Barbera, the president of Diversified Professional Coaching, a nationwide organization that provides coaching services to business professionals and leaders all across the United States. Dr. Barbera is an author, and she has co-authored 2 books. She was a successful managing principal for over 30 years at Waddell & Reed. She's an adjunct professor, American College, and at California Lutheran University, and she holds more advanced degrees and advanced certifications than you can shake a stick at. Most importantly, I think Dr. Barbera is a fantastic certified business coach, an international speaker, and a consultant of renown. Her passion is personal and business development, and she believes, like I do, that leadership plays a critical role in the achievement of any level of success. Take my word for it, I could extol her accomplishments and her virtues for a very long time, but I suspect you get the picture. Suffice it to say, we're fortunate to have as our guest today, Dr. Daralee Barbera. Dr. Barbera, it's a pleasure to have you here today. I'll be honest, I've been looking forward to today's episode and having you on as a guest since we first talked about it a few months ago. I can't wait to get started with our interview. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Michael. It is more than my pleasure to be here, and I'm just so impressed by the wonderful work that you're doing in leadership and bringing this wonderful opportunity to connect leaders with what you're doing. So thank you for having me.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for your kind comments. Well, for starters, Daralee, I would love to have the opportunity for you to give our listeners a little bit of background on what you're excited to be working on right now in your coaching practice out there in California.
Oh, goodness, so many things. Well, right now, I'm really excited about the work that we're doing in bringing the certification skills for coaching to our leaders, helping to create and maintain that visibility that leadership has changed. I became a manager in the 80s, and it was always in my title for, I think, decades. And when I think about what is leadership today, I get management. Certainly, I teach MBA courses and MSM courses. I understand management, but really today's leader, it's about being an effective coach. So that is what I'm really, really excited about, is just the increasing role and visibility for coaching. We've always coached, but now we're really focused on being great coaches.
If we're going to be
great leaders.
What a wonderful thing to be a part of. Well, one of the things I like to ask my guests about is music, because music is another of my passions. So do you have a favorite musical group, a favorite artist that you like to listen to?
I don't. I just love music. Music is not my strong point. I never studied music, but I'm a wonderful audience. As you asked that, Lady Gaga came to my mind as you said music, but also Josh Groban came to my mind. So there I am. I wish I had a better answer for you, Michael.
No, that was just fine. Well, I'm interested in hearing a little bit about teamwork and collaboration. How have you developed strong teamwork and collaboration on the teams that you've worked with over the years?
Well, teamwork and collaboration, there probably couldn't be a more important topic for our leaders because, leadership is not a solo sport. It's about, it's a corny little saying, but I always say together is better and solo is too slow. And sometimes I think as leaders, it can be easy to think that you need to do a lot of things yourself, that it's all up to you. Whereas really a better way to lead is to realize that it's really up to you to work together with the team. So to be able to create that collaborative environment, that culture of sharing, and certainly just a daily walk that we're all in it together. I know in my 34 years in financial planning, I was a managing principal. And what that meant was that I had at one time up to 83 financial advisors, and they all had their own practices, professional practices. So certainly they had their individual goals, and that was critical because they're running their own businesses and they have their own teams. But we always set goals together. So my goals were always this aggregation of their separate goals, but
Sure.
we were in it together. And that's where coaching comes in, because I always took a coaching approach, not a managing approach. So I think number one, back to your question, an answer is to set goals together, and then to aggregate and bubble up your goals, and then also to publicize those goals. It took me a little while, like maybe a decade or so, to realize that I shouldn't keep my goals a secret. And I did that because I felt like I was responsible for my goals. Well, as soon as I realized that, I certainly didn't accomplish anything on my own, that my goals depended on my team to accomplish their goals and so forth. I made them public, made them visible in my monthly newsletter, publicized the progress. So everybody was in it together for the team goals. So another really important part about teamwork and collaboration, creating this safe space to be a team, is to make every day a school day. So where it's all right not to have the answer, where we actually get up in the morning and go to work, whatever that may mean now that people are working at home, not necessarily going to an office, but to actually walk in every day, virtually or literally, with a question, something that you don't know from yesterday where you need to get that answer, and to create that safe space where literally every day is a school day. So I think that's really, really important for that teamwork and being able to bring people together, because where are you going to get that answer? From your other team members.
Right.
And then also that values-based perspective that everybody shares and is common with the team.
I have to imagine that being an academic, you probably have read a business book or a leadership book or two. Do you have any favorites that you'd like to tell our audience about?
Well, I think my favorite these days, it's called Leadership, Enhancing the Lessons of Experience by Hughes, Guinea, and Curfey. And I like it because it is a very deep book. It has a lot in it, but they frame the entire book through what they call an interactional framework. And they define leadership as the intersection of three things. It's the leaders, the followers, and the situation. So the book breaks those three down, a focus on leaders, then on the followers and the situation, and that intersection is leadership. And I really do think that is one of the best references a leader can have on their shelf.
Well, I can't wait to get myself a copy of it, because I have never had the opportunity to read that book. That's going to be great. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
What was it that led you to investing so much time and so much energy over the years to develop other people as great leaders?
Well, leadership matters a lot, and it's not easy. It is certainly not the easy professional path. And the good news these days is that we are keenly aware that leadership can be developed. And leadership makes such an important difference in people's lives, and it is such a huge responsibility. I think of leadership as this domino effect, right? If we line up the dominoes and we have a good leader, we get to tap those dominoes, and it goes through and affects so many people in a positive way. But if we don't have good leadership, if it's poor leadership and we tap those dominoes, the impact can just be devastating for so many people in so many ways. So leadership is just a huge responsibility.
Couldn't agree with you more. Daralee, I'm fascinated by the calling to leadership and how and when people were called into leadership. Would you mind sharing with us at what point in your life or in your career that you heard the calling to become a leader?
That is such an interesting question. And as I reflect on it, I have to say high school.
Okay.
You know, high school is such a great community setting where there's so many activities. And I found that I was continually tapped on the shoulder to take a leadership role in whether it was tutoring the kids at the elementary school or taking a group to the senior home to help or work at the bake sale or the car wash. And I always took a leadership role. And I quickly figured out that I had followers. And I took that as a serious responsibility to just do the best job that I could do to give them what they needed so they could succeed at whatever that task was. Mm-hmm. But something that I realized quickly was that I couldn't do it all myself. So I would always quickly appoint jobs for everyone and give them all responsibilities so that things could get done quickly and fast. And I realized that it really is about growing the other people. So I guess high school, which is, sounds like a silly answer.
You got started early. That's tremendous. Did you have any leadership mentors along the way who either made a big impression upon you or perhaps a big investment in you?
Well, it's interesting as you ask that question. What comes to mind, of course, first of all, are the people that really were not good leaders. And I find that very inspirational to be sure not to repeat those observations. But two things I can say personally and then professionally. Personally, my parents, they were always very encouraging and supportive. Whatever thing I wanted to get involved in, they would really make sure that I understood why, kind of Simon Sinek-ish upon reflection. They would make sure that my why was firmly in place. And then how was I going to do it? What was I going to do? And then they would say, how can we help? So an ideal way to grow up. I was very fortunate. And then professionally, my first managing principal, when I decided to get licensed and trained to be a financial advisor so I could take financial planning, I just wanted to do it for my family and friends. And Tom Kolanowski at Waddell & Reed hired me, and he was really probably the best exemplar of a leader possible. So I was very fortunate to be able to be raised professionally in his presence.
That's terrific. I'm delighted that you and Tom had the opportunity to connect somewhere along the way, and he made a nice change in your life and your trajectory. Very cool. Can you tell our audience about what you're doing to raise the level of your leadership game these days? What have you been doing lately?
Well, I took a little bit of an early retirement, and I did that so I could go get my doctorate in leadership. Okay. And getting a doctorate was always on my bucket list. I got derailed by my wonderful career for 3.5 decades, but I never lost sight of that doctorate. So getting a doctorate in leadership, it was at USC, which is, I'm in Los Angeles, so very close by. It was really an interesting opportunity to, instead of studying to prepare for a career in the future, I had that window to be able to be reflective and study leadership from having been there. And it just connected decades of dots. And it was interesting. In my cohort, everyone else were seasoned leaders, but from other industries. So that's probably the biggest thing I've done. And I did that because I wanted to teach graduate level courses and continue to just really focus on the study of leadership and the promotion of good leadership. I
love the imagery that you just used to describe that, the dots and the connecting of the dots. I think that is so important for people to just figure out somehow how to connect the dots in life. Wonderful. Well, we're going to take a brief break and have a word from our sponsor, and then we will be back in just a moment with Dr. Daralee Barbera. What are you doing to develop the next generation of leaders for your company? If I told you that in 12 to 24 months, we could prepare your next generation of leaders for greatness, would you be intrigued? A majority of today's businesses promote from within to develop new managers and leaders to fuel their future growth. Here at Michael Beach Coaching and Consulting, we've built our Emerging Leaders Development Program so that it guarantees your success. Our coaching philosophy is to outfit each emerging leader so that they can proactively and confidently solve business problems and anticipate the future on their own. Call us today at 520-732-2222 888-888-8866 to arrange for a no-cost, no-obligation discovery conversation with one of our master coaches. All right, we're back from our break. We're having a wonderful conversation today with Dr. Daralee Barbera. And my next question for you, Daralee, is probably a tough one for a lot of folks to answer. I hope it won't be for you. What's the accomplishment in your life or in your career of which you might be most proud?
Well, two things I'd be most proud of. So personally, I'm very proud of my children. They are just wonderful humans, and they certainly focus on themselves because we know you have to take care of yourself personally, but they have this awesome finger on the pulse of societal needs. So I'm very proud of them for that perspective that they bring. Professionally, I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to launch a couple hundred of financial advisors in their careers into the profession of financial advising, because it's so important for people to have a personal financial plan and to be able to set their goals and have dreams and then go and accomplish them. And so along with hiring, developing, licensing, training, and supporting these hundreds of financial advisors, that meant that I had the privilege of actually meeting with thousands and thousands of clients to help them develop and implement those personal plans. So professionally, I'd say that's it.
Well, both of those accomplishments are very significant in terms of the impact they have. And I suspect they are, to a large extent, the reward for the excellent way that you have conducted yourself throughout your life and your career. You mentioned, as we were preparing for our show today, that you anticipate 2021 may well prove to be almost as challenging as 2020. Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with us on that?
Yes. And I think for leaders, there has never been a more important time for leaders to just be at the top of their game, because people are looking for leadership and they need leadership because these have been challenging times and different times for us, certainly. So I think of inclusive leadership, and I speak often about inclusive leadership, and I think a lot about inclusive leadership. And it's interesting as we look at the academics of teaching leadership, it's not in the textbooks. So it is more of a immediately contemporary concept, and you can Google it. So everyone is saying a little something about it, but I'm going to share what I think of when I think of inclusive leadership. And I think of 3 C's. I think of community, communication, and connectivity. And I think for leaders to be inclusive leaders, people want to belong. And I really believe that's what a great leader does, is that they give people a home. They recognize people as individuals and they make their leadership about that person. Certainly we have to focus on the process. We have to focus on the products. We have to get results, but it has to be person-centric. So my 3 C's. So if we think about community, that's where, we used to get up in the morning, get in the car, go drive to our office, and there was our community. But what is it that we saw there? We saw people with shared values and our shared culture and so forth. But now it's interesting with things like this, Michael, our connectivity, that creates our community. And so with the pandemic, there have been a lot of bad things, but I think there's going to be a lot of positive things that we retain. And being able to create community, and for a leader to be able to so quickly and efficiently be in the personal space and the zone of those folks that count on them, is really pretty cool. And the connectivity like this, that is so important. And we know that interconnectedness of the team, that's what helps build our culture and our community. And so then comes communication. And possibly there could not be anything more important than getting communication right. Certainly personally and professionally, if we have poor communication, we're pretty in trouble. It is something that we always have to work on, because we know that it can go really well sometimes, and we can think, all of us, a million times when it didn't go right. So communication, real easy. If only it were this easy as just a 1, 2, 3. But we've got the message, the sender, and the receiver. And that is actually a semester class that I teach. So
okay.
Just let's focus on those three things, the message,
Great.
the sender, and the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And let's think about what does it take to get those right. Lastly, about 2 weeks ago, Harvard Business Review, which I recommend all leaders subscribe to because
Great idea.
it's a great gift to get in the email their ping and sign up for the leadership pings. They had an article called What an Inclusive Leader Sounds Like. And they had a quick 1, 2, 3. They said they have subject matter expertise. So we know leaders just must be credible. They are authentic. And they have audience-centered language. So there's our 1, 2, 3 on what does an inclusive leader sound like.
Awesome. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking a little bit about connectivity. We've all been through a tremendously challenging year in 2020. The amount of pivots that we had to make, the number of challenges we had to address and overcome was really just beyond category. It had never been like that in any of our lifetimes. And so what people have been telling me very frequently lately is that they're hoping if 2021 brings anything, it's the chance to get back to connecting the way that we used to. Now everybody's connecting with Zoom and Microsoft Teams meetings and things like that. And those are great technologies. But, oh my gosh, as human beings, we sure miss being able to just sit and shake someone's hand or give them a hug and sit next to them and have a shared experience. So here's hoping that as 2021 unfolds, we're going to get the chance to go back and connect the way we used to. That would be awesome.
Yes. I think it's made us very appreciative of what we had.
Right. Well said. I think we all get a tremendous amount of leadership advice during the course of our lifetimes and the course of our careers. What might be the greatest leadership advice anyone has ever given you, Dr. Barbera?
Well, what comes to my mind is I took a class called The Essentials of Leadership and Management from Gamma International, and it was a week-long residency, and the instructor was just one of the best leaders on the planet, and his name is Conk Buckley. And something he said in the class has stuck with me forever. It's, don't let the way limit the what. So if we think about what does that mean? Don't let the way limit the what. Mm-hmm. To me, that just says, give yourself permission to dream big, to create that vision, to look forward into the future and ask yourself, hey, what does this look like when it's working? And then don't give in to all the limiting beliefs that we all can fall victim to, focusing on all the things that won't work and why we can't attain that goal. Instead, figure out, what if I did attain that goal? What are the things that will work? What's the business plan I could set to accomplish that? And so don't let the way limit the what. And that applies to personal and professional. So you got to see it, believe in it, and then just figure out what will it take to make it happen. It might not be here next week. It might take a couple of years, but just figure out how to do it.
Oh, that's fantastic advice. It's so important to not allow negativity to get a toehold. Because once you start dreaming, usually the second thing that happens is you start running through the list of all the reasons why the dream's not going to happen. You lose the inspiration very quickly if you let that happen. Great advice. I think I like Conk Buckley. Never met him, but sounds like a terrific person.
You would like Conk Buckley, yes.
Yeah, I think I like the advice very much. Do you have a 60-second leadership lesson that you would care to share with our listeners today?
Yes. And I would say there's so many important lessons, but setting goals. Goal setting is critical for leadership success. So a couple of things on setting goals. One is always set your business goals, but at the same time, set your personal goals, because we so often as leaders are focused on everyone else. We do not set our own personal goals. So really, please do those side by side for yourself and for your team. And then take those goals, typically around November 15th or so, we're setting our annual goals. But I just want to say goal setting happens all the time. So it's never too late to set a new goal. And then break your goals down into bite-sized pieces so they are meaningful and they can be accomplished. And I recommend always having no less frequently than quarterly meetings with your team one-on-one. Take goals, break them down month by month. And then when you get to a monthly goal, only give yourself 3 weeks to get it done. And that 21-day goals is probably the big takeaway from this. If you can accomplish it in 21 days, great. And then what if you can't? You've got this extra week for a buffer. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off, really keeps you focused. And I found that bite-sized goals. That's my 60-second leadership lesson.
Wow, what a clever technique, 21-day goals instead of monthly goals. I love it. I think I'm going to start using that one. How much of a value do you place on emotional intelligence when you're recruiting people to any organization where you're a leader or when you're developing great leaders?
I place a lot of importance on emotional intelligence because, as we know, you could have someone that is intellectually very intelligent, and if they do not have emotional intelligence, they could easily fail to succeed. So the good news is that emotional intelligence is a skill set that we can develop. And then just, Michael, real quick, I tend to think in terms of what's more meaningful to me is to think about emotional literacy. Because if we think about the first thing that a leader needs to do, they need to be able to be in touch with themselves. They need to be able to read themselves well. That establishes this great baseline for being able to read and understand others. And so emotional literacy, I think, helps us really get a handle on what's emotional intelligence and helps us to apply it a little better. Being able to read others, it helps us more put a finger on the pulse of why are people coming from where they're coming from, to better understand their emotions, their moods, their motivations. It helps us understand better so that we can get along with people, empathize, adapt, all those good skills that bubble up and create emotional intelligence. So emotional literacy.
I hope you were listening there, audience. There is no substitute for what Dr. Barbera calls emotional literacy. It sets you up for success in your personal life, your professional life, anywhere. And it's one thing that you have a tremendous amount of control over if you choose to work at it. So thank you very much, Dr. Barbera, for that marvelous answer. What are the primary things that you try to teach your emerging leaders as you're developing their management and leadership skills?
Well, I think importantly, and we actually talked about it a moment ago, is that you just can't do everything yourself, nor should you expect to do everything yourself. And indeed, that's not leadership. So DeSkilling is a really important skill. And just simply, it means that if you are doing a task that someone else could do, let them do it. And you need to stop doing that task yourself. Now, it may mean that you have to invest a little bit of time to help someone else really do it as well as you need it to be done. But that's leadership. And that's how we grow the team. So probably first thing I say to people, I want them to think in terms of what are you going to de-skill away? Keep only those tasks that only you can do. Now, it's hard. It's easily said, but to de-skill, Michael, I think is so important.
Sounds fantastic. I hear, and I suspect you do too, frequently when someone is overwhelmed and we start digging into why they're overwhelmed, they're holding on to everything. And they tell themselves, well, geez, it would take me 30 minutes to do it, or it would take me an hour to show him how to do it. And they think that's the end of it. The mathematics just doesn't work. So I'm just going to keep doing this thing. And I say, but how long have you been doing it? And they say, what do you mean? Well, how long have you owned this task? Well, 3 years. So how long are you going to own it in the future if you don't de-skill it or delegate it to someone else? The real math equation is if I spend an hour teaching someone else how to do this and I don't ever have to touch it again, how many hours am I going to get back into my week? It could be hundreds. Interesting. All right, my final question, Daralee. It's obvious to me that you have learned over the years to become a great leader. Can you reveal for our listeners the best single leadership development investment you've ever made in yourself?
The very best thing I ever did as a leader was to join a study group. And I actually joined 2 study groups.
Okay.
One study group was a study group of really top leaders at my company. And then the other study group were top leaders at other companies. And certainly these were all competitors, other financial services companies. And both groups were such a privilege to be in. And I learned so much from everyone else, and it was such a beautiful peer experience where everyone in the study group really invested in everybody else in the study group. So I cannot recommend strongly enough to please join a study group or start a study group if there aren't any to join. In fact, that is what we did for our study group at the company, was started it ourselves.
Well, Daralee, thank you so very much for making the time today to be my guest for this episode of What Are You Doing? I feel quite certain that you've shared some amazingly valuable insights with our audience today, the kind that are going to stick with them for a while and light their way. So thank you very much for that. I hope you enjoyed speaking with our audience, and we wish you continued success with your many activities as you work to develop leaders around the United States. Well, that's our episode for today, leaders. We want to thank today's guest, Dr. Daralee Barbera, the president of Diversified Professional Coaching, LLC. Dr. Barbera is an amazing educator and a terrific coach and a developer of human talent out in the great state of California. Our next episode will be released soon, and we'll be introducing you to yet another great business leader who's making a profound difference in the world. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today, and please reach out to us at info@michaelbeachcoach.com if you'd like to be a guest, or if you'd like to recommend a guest for the show. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn and check out our videos on our Michael Beach Coaching and Consulting YouTube channel and the blogs on our website if you'd like some additional nuggets of gold around leadership. We'd love to have you check it out. We'll look forward to our next episode and seeing you all again. Until then, remember, leadership starts with you. You're going to have to go first. You're going to have to get started investing in others, helping them to become what they want to become. And as you do, you're going to build trust and build great relationships with everyone around you. And with every day that you're investing in others, you're going to start noticing your own relationship capital continuing to grow and appreciate in value. If you believe in yourself and you believe the best about everyone around you, you're going to have a tremendous amount of success. See you next time.